three things: that mental health is a big issue, and menstrual shame and menstrual pathology are a big issue, and birth trauma. So those are like titles that have many things sitting underneath them. So like mental health has all the depression and anxiety and all sorts of mood disorders and eating disorders and addictions, and like, you know, so prevalent. And each of them will have reasons behind them that include not just the individual's life, but also the family that they come from and the generational trauma. And what we have to do to decolonizing our wounds at a collective level is firstly for us to wake up. We need to wake up from what I've called the patriarchal slumber spell. So like, it's kind of like we are asleep. We've kind of turned off from what it actually means to be a woman and have a woman's body. You know, we need to look at who's colonizing our womb and why. And so there's various sort of ways this happens. So medicine, you know, medicine has colonized our womb in terms of owning contraception, and then government and lawmakers also have affected our ability to be free with our womb. So they've colonized our power of our womb through, like, anti-abortion law is one of the significant ways that is affecting us. And then also cultures and religions have colonized our feminine power, our womb, by having certain ways we have to behave, or things we can do and we can't do. The fact that the oral contraceptive pill exists is, you know, a revolutionary, scientific, awesome thing. However, it actually switches off 150 mechanisms in a woman's body. And, you know, it's not a very healthy thing to be doing to your body, but it's the thing that most women do. Like making choices for contraception, for example, that are good for life, good for health, I mean, you know, and that equality with men is not about being the same as them. That's never going to happen. So those are the ways that we need to kind of free ourselves from all of those agendas and basically remember who we are. You know, we're not going to get agency, we're not going to be decolonized until we claim who we are. Also to reclaim our womb's intelligence. You know, like, it's not just this random thing in our body, it's the seat of our power. The womb is the interface to the cosmic connection. It's where the baby comes through, where the baby's soul comes. Like, it's beyond understanding with basic science. So in reclaiming our womb intelligence, we can get what's really going on there, and also to understand that for birth, for example, the womb and the baby work together. And not just the womb, the whole female body work together for birth. Like, it's so we need to reclaim that intelligence. We need to reduce pathologizing the menstrual cycle and treat birth as a natural process for women, not some medical event. And the other thing that we need to stop happening is just routine hysterectomies around menopause, thinking, oh, you don't need that anymore, so let's take it out. So the womb is more than we can imagine. Like, we don't even know the powers and purpose beyond what we know, and there'll be heaps more things going on. And on a practical level, one of the things we can do, and this is a campaign that I've been doing, is about renaming our body parts that are named after men. Yeah, like there are 8 parts of our body, so parts of our breast, parts of our genitalia, and parts of our reproductive system that are all named after the men who discovered them. So, like, that's colonization 101, you know. So one of the ways we can feel decolonized is to name our body parts in our language. not by some man who discovered it. It's a bit like, you know, if you look at a map during the colonizing times and they had countries like flags in the countries, you know, of who colonized what and all that. This is what it's like in our bodies. So we can change that. I mean, I don't know whether the medical encyclopedias will ever adopt our new names, but we can.
Absolutely. I don't know if there is another level of awareness and healing programs we have to design for these systems also to understand. As you said, maybe they are not aware that it's kind of controlling and imposing, and it has happened in last some 2000, 3000 years, and before that it was, you know, it had a better, like at least in India, when I look at the traditions and all of that, where women and the power was much understood, the goddess powers were much understood. So there were more kind of this balance was there. Though I feel that our healing is not related to, you know, outside agency for us to heal. If we make choices and understand and learn about our healing and choose a path, but said that for the systems to change, you know, should there be programs for them, but for them to understand, okay, this is such an issue and issue for the entire humankind, and for how are there movements going on in such direction also, Jane?
Well, I hope so. And yes, there are. But the first thing that needs to happen is that women need to do it. Because if we're asking the men to change their minds about it and the women around them are going, no, that doesn't matter, then what's the point? You know? Yes. So my feeling is that first thing that needs to happen is that the women need to all understand this, and then they can talk to the men about it, because everybody will be in relationship with fathers, brothers, husbands, whatever, boyfriends, so they can share what they've learned. And then then systems like, so the menstrual and menopause workplace policy is something that is a way a system gets to learn that. So, and then in terms of health, there's a lot of people doing a lot of work around the globe for birth, lots of wonderful programs and research and things like the White Ribbon Alliance, all trying to get birth where at least women are consenting to the things that are happening to them. Like, that's not even happening. So it's, you know, it feels a long way off this, but we've got to do it. We have to keep doing it. And so women first, I reckon, and then the systems. And hopefully there's women in places within all of the systems so they can start to be doing the changes in there too. So policy changes around, you know, like I think we've seen it around birth, like there's maternity and paternity like leave and stuff, and so there's so much to change. But the thing is, like you said, it's only a new recent kind of thing that it's like this. We think it's been like this forever, and like, you know, in our small narrow vision it has, but like human beings have been around for, like us, like with the same brain, so working in the same way as us, for about 200,000 years. So that's the latest estimation, and apparently every time they try to figure this out, it gets longer. So humans like us have been around for a long time, and prior to the patriarchy, we were living in egalitarian cultures where we were agriculturalists or hunters and gatherers, and different things in different countries. But it wasn't a patriarchal culture, it was egalitarian, which means equal, and it was matrifocal, which meant that the focus was on the mothers and the babies. Like whatever needed to happen for the mothers and babies to thrive was the focus of the culture and the community. And that's not the case now, and we're doomed because of it. So yes, we need to change at the system level, and but you know, as within, so without. So the first thing we have to do is work on ourselves, because we need to dismantle the patriarchy and all the systems that support the oppression of women. But the first place we need to do that is inside ourselves, because we have all internalized the patriarchy. And so we all hold the patriarchal beliefs inside us. So we need to do the inner work to release that. And the ways to do that is just to very simply, pay attention to what you're telling yourself, about your body, about your menstrual cycle, about your worth and your value and all of that. And if there's anything that's bad, it comes from a system that is keeping women oppressed.
Jane, so what is the current options available for childbirth in Australia, and the situation there with respect to birth disparities due to racism and privilege?
Yeah. Well, there's lots of different ways you can have a baby in Australia, but I think most people think there's only one way, and that's to go to the doctor and have your baby in hospital. And that is how most people do it. But we also have different other options. So one of the ways is called free birth. So that's if a couple just have their baby without a midwife and without a doctor, just at home by themselves with their support people. So free birth. And then home birth, where you have your baby at home and you have your own midwife. And then birth centre, but birth centres are whether freestanding or connected to a hospital. And that's more of like a home birth in a hospital kind of situation. And then there's the normal hospital scenario, and that can be either a public hospital or a private hospital. And so you can have the care of a midwife or the care of a general practitioner and an obstetrician, and you can either go to a public hospital or a private hospital, and you could have a private obstetrician in a private hospital. That's sort of like seen as that's the most expensive thing. And in our modern cultures, we think that the most expensive thing is the best, and it certainly is not. And the differences are huge. The most intervention happens in private hospitals with private doctors. So women get heaps more intervention for their money. Like, for example, the cesarean rate the elective cesarean rate, so choosing to have a cesarean before labour in a public hospital is 18%. In a private hospital, it's 32.5%. So heaps more private hospital, private obstetrician, elective cesareans. And then in terms of the racial disparities and privilege in that, so to focus in on our Indigenous population, so Australian Aboriginals, they fare much worse than everybody else. So that mostly when they live, if they live in just in general communities, they just slot into the public hospital situation. But if they live outside in rural areas, on country as it's called, then usually what happens is that the women have to leave their home and their family at about 36 weeks pregnant and go and travel far away to a hospital in a city and stay there until they have the baby. So they leave all their support, all their family, all their children, and have to go away and have the baby. And that's like so bad. And they have a huge induction rate, like 35% induction rate of those for that. The babies way less, so lower birth weight and higher perinatal mortality rate. So there's a lot of reasons for all of that, and it's a terrible shame on our country that for Australian Indigenous women that birth there's so many inequities and worse situations for them. And there are things that are being done about it, which is great, and one of them is a system to help them birth in their own environment. So birthing on country, it's called. And so Aboriginal midwives and other midwives helping the women to have their babies where they live. And hopefully that will continue to increase in its availability. And also a lot of healthcare needs to happen as well, because a lot of the Indigenous women come from families that have been, had terrible things happen to them, and that all ends up impacting their health, and then that impacts everything. So, yeah, lots of different ways to have a baby, but one of the highest cesarean rates in the world, and not really very good.
Just as what you were saying, Jane, about the indigenous communities, right? So even in India, I've lived with them. So somehow I thought their sense of connecting with body, because they're so closer to nature, right from their spiritual practices to understanding the body and certain level of better connection with the whole nature cycle. So I thought and even I've seen the midwives there, and they would have given birth to the entire village, if they stand, they say, I've given birth to all of them. So where there's limited intervention of outside modern medicine and places like that. So as you were saying, like, they themselves might be having the intelligence of natural birthing, right, at these places, but is there any laws that prevent them from giving natural birth? Or maybe they need certain support, basic support to, as you said, the countryside birthing policies. But did they also lose out on the intelligence because of the trauma inflicted upon them, or they still carry that? Okay.
No, they're made to go. They make the women go to hospital.
Yeah.
They override their choice, and they tell them that they have to go. It's very sad.
Yeah, even I think a lot of our villages also, we follow WHO practices. They've whatever is laid down, and we need to follow that. But yeah, I think somewhere I was hoping there's a good balance there, and we need to understand that.
Not yet. Not yet. There are lots of wonderful people working toward it and trying to make it more available, and it's certainly gets a lot of attention, and but it's nowhere near good enough.
Just to get an idea of how things are around the world, and I think there's a long way to go for us to.
A long way for all of us.
Again, a question on conscious birthing, Jane. It's about what is the importance of conscious birthing in meeting women's expectations of childbirth, and how accessible, we kind of spoke about accessibility, but how accessible is conscious birthing today?
Well, what we mean by conscious birthing. So conscious birthing, to my mind, is what happens when we fully trust and surrender to a force of nature moving through us that we work with, that births the baby. So then in order to do that, we have to do preparation and inner work to let go of all the fears we have and to embrace our full, trusting, powerful, strong woman self to be able to surrender. So I think that conscious birth is accessible to everybody, but what it requires is a lot of inner work, a lot of unraveling our fears and our beliefs and our attitudes about our bodies and about authority and about birth and about our power and our autonomy. So it's everybody could do it, because you have to do it no matter what's going on anyway, So wherever you are having a baby, whoever's there, you can still do the process in the way where it's conscious, where you have a spiritual experience, basically, where you go into an altered state of consciousness and perhaps travel to your womb and bring your baby earthside. So doing the inner work prepares you for everything that could arise during birth in a conscious way. So, like, for example, fears or ideas you have about your body or whatever. So I think it's really important in terms of helping women realize why they have the birth they have. So the birth we have is not a random thing. It's like, it's what was coming. It's kind of like what the setup is. It's connected to our menstrual cycle, our menarche, how we were initiated into womanhood. It's connected to our own birth. It's connected to childhood trauma we've had, and it's connected to all the women in our family and how they've given birth. So understanding all of that is what I think conscious birth is, because then you can do the inner work, heal all the things you need to heal, get over all the fears you need to get over, etc., and find a safe place within yourself to go to give birth. And so in preparation for birth and conscious birthing, that's the place to go. Like, what can I draw? What resources do I have within me? And if you feel like you have none, then you've got to figure out how come you think that, because you have so many.
Right. Jane, this is related to, I think, any form of activism and all the work we've been doing. That given that humanity as a whole is going through so much, how can we bring in more gentleness, more ease and effectiveness to the fight for equality and fight for a better world?
Well, that's the right question too, hey? So, well, as the wise man from your land said, I think we need to be the change we want to see in the world. So I think we need to work on many levels where we can make a difference to bring gentleness and kindness. Like, that's got to be the first thing. And so, like with all the things we've been talking about, the menstrual cycle, childbirth, mental health, and all of the things, trauma, etc. If we can bring acceptance, non-judgment, kindness and gentleness to all of that, then that will change. And we need to really be aware of the need for self-care. Like, we have to look after ourselves. We need to sleep. We need to sleep enough. We need to eat properly. And we can do all kinds of practices like meditation and other spiritual practices to improve all of that. I think we need communities, local communities as well as online, but we need local communities, and we need to gather support around ourselves. When humans are herd animals, and we're meant to belong to a herd, a group. So anybody who's outside the herd or the group feels isolated, and that's a doom loop. So we need to create communities of support, and we need to use our strengths, and particularly for women, like our strengths happen when we come together and we tend each other and we look after the children for each other and support each other. And more than anything, I think one of the most important things we need to do is to look after the earth and the animals. And because we're seeing the effects of not doing that, and maybe it's even too late, but we need to serve the earth and the animals, and we also need to make every decision based on thinking about how it's going to affect the future. So how is the decision we make today going to affect your great grandchildren? And if it's not going to be good for them, then we shouldn't do it. So I think we need to do all of those things, and humans are pretty hopeless at all of this kind of stuff, so we'll see how we go.
True, Jane. And I think all the practice, as you said, taking care of Mother Earth, because she gives us so much and we draw from her so much. And even some of the spiritual practices, I feel, are so patriarchal. We kind of ground everything and we keep putting it down, but we're never thinking of making an offering to the earth or taking care of the animals around. And somewhere, because we get disconnected, we don't know how to take care of animals around ourselves, and reflecting on the choices. And also, like, given that so much is happening, many people are going through a lot of trauma, or they have to fight through a system that takes in a lot of, that drains our energy a lot. That's why I was asking how, when you said self-care practices is very important for us to center ourselves and go out there and then again try to be that change, but to go inwards as well. Jane, so the question about which you already kind of touched upon was the communities. And so how does a healed sisterhood community look like? And because all things are born out of women, in a way of destiny, in a way, a destiny of wholeness of humanity kind of falls on the sisterhood. How crucial is for us to heal the sisterhood wounds, for us to transform this reality?
I love this question so much. Ashwini, you said the destiny of wholeness of the human race falls to the sisterhood. I love that. That's so awesome. So, what does a healed sisterhood community look like? I think it's a place of non-judgment, non-competitiveness, inclusivity, and a place that's safe for everybody and accepting of everybody and holding like a circle. So women have been put against each other. It's part of the patriarchy, divide and conquer. It works. But if the sisterhood comes together, imagine, it'll be so wonderful. So I think it is really crucial. I think it comes, and I think that the healed sisterhood comes within a positive menstrual culture. So once we have a positive menstrual culture and woman-centered birthing, so not medical birthing, woman-centered birthing, a positive menstrual culture, and a community support where we're looking after and looking out for each other, giving and receiving, then that's the kind of thing that we can do to heal the sisterhood and live in a healed way. We need to have women's circles that meet regularly, building trust. A women's circle is like the heart of a community. So that's that. And circles for the maidens, the young girls. And also we need to honor each other and honor the earth and the seasons and the moon all together. There's a whole practice we can do as sisters together that reinforces our interconnectedness with each other and the earth and the animals and the elements and the spirits, and shows us the responsibility that we have as part of the whole. So I think it's happening, but I think it's it's going to be hard for some women because they've been raised, we've all been raised in a patriarchy where we've been put against each other. But again, it's part of this waking up. Part of this waking up to the fact that the wounded sisterhood is because we've been encouraged to be jealous of each other, compete with each other, talk about each other behind our backs, and judge each other. So just have to change all of that. And obviously, children will do what they see their parents doing. So we can change in the generations to come by being it ourselves.
If you would like to answer, I didn't put a question on menopause. And I think there's not much done, even with my mom. And as family, I don't know how much we understood her and how much we could support her. And I've not seen or read or any support groups, at least here around me where I am, where, support is provided to a woman through menopause, and what inner preparedness also she needs while she's going through that, because I see a lot of elderly women kind of struggling through that. If you have some pointers for women undergoing menopause.
Well, I think if we see menopause for what it actually is, it's like another birth. And it's a birth of the wise woman in us. It's like the beginning of the second half of our lives, and it's a rebirth. So there's a labor, and it can take a while, and it has all kinds of physical and mental things that happen. So what I think is most important about menopause is to learn about it, so that you know that it's a normal process. It's not a disease. It's a normal process that every woman goes through, and it's probably the least talked about rite of passage that we go through, and therefore probably most feared and least understood. So number one, education. And the thing about menopause is that everything that needs to come up for healing in your life comes up around menopause. So you can either use the opportunity to do all the inner healing, or you have to ignore it. Mm-hmm. And it just gets worse. So it's a time of great change, and the changes that happen to us are because of our hormonal levels shifting from being fertile to not fertile, and it affects everything in us, and we are not the same after. We're completely different to how we were. We are no longer sort of programmed by our hormones to look after everybody. We don't want to do that anymore. Right. So when we have to do that, that's when it starts getting difficult and challenging, because our hormones change so that we no longer feel we have to sacrifice ourselves for everybody anymore. And that causes a big problem in a lot of places. So education around what's going on and what to expect and how to be with it in different ways. I've made an e-course about it. It's called Autumn Woman Harvest Queen. That might be helpful. But I think it would be good for women to have support groups around it, you know, like and that's a new thing everywhere in the world, to be fair. Like, it's ridiculous. We're getting rockets into space and people trying to go to Mars, and we're just starting to talk about menopause. Ridiculous.
Absolutely. So true. And brings in so much clarity now that you said. I mean, there's a long way to go, but to have somebody like you who's doing this work is so important, Jane. At this stage in life, also wherever we are, I feel it's important. It's more of reclaiming and remembering our wisdom, right, more than learning something new. So I think we're doing that.
That's it. Reclaiming and remembering, because our bodies know it.
Yes. So just by talking about it, I've seen how things just open up and become clear, in ourselves, and from there we can begin to heal. Jane, so this is the last question for you, is about, I think it's around new moon time also. If you have two intentions, Jane, one for yourself and one for the world, what would that be?
Yes. And okay, so my one for the world, I'll just read it. I call on all the benevolent powers available to bring humans into right relationship with the earth for the highest good of all.
So be it.
And for myself, so be it. And for myself, I call the goddess to speak to me and through me.
Wow, so be it.